Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Meeting Gold episode. Today, I say this every time, and I say that every time, we have a super special guest, Sarah Pritula, and sorry, your position again at Community Crew and Central.
Executive Director, Director of Operations.
I love it. Sarah has a very interesting background. You currently work at a very large charity. You've helped build it from the ground up with a solid team. And I mean, Central Church has built one of the biggest buildings, if not the biggest, probably the biggest. What's the square footage?
75,000.
75,000 square feet, everybody. That's incredible. It's the place where you can literally rent any and every room possible that you can imagine. Sarah, a little background on who you are. I gave you a little bit of background on what you do, but just kind of go a little bit more in depth with that if you could for the viewers.
Sure. So my name is Sarah, and I oversee an organization called Community Crew. And most people ask, what is Community Crew? And we provide lunches for kids who would go to school without. And so we work strictly throughout the Niagara Region at this time, and we serve just over 1,700 kids each and every week throughout the school year.
You know, I gotta say, it's mind-boggling. You never really think that there's children in this area that go to school without lunches. Where did you guys kind of find that as your niche to really support?
It actually started through Central Church, and it was a life group that had heard from a teacher or a friend that said, hey, I have kids in my class that come to school on a very regular basis without food. And all I want to be able to do is provide them with a snack or a sandwich or something to eat. So it all started with a small group making muffins once a week and providing them to these kids.
Really? Small beginnings. Now you guys are really providing. Being a donor to Community Crew myself, I wish I would donate more, but we're getting there. But it's really interesting to see the growth pattern that you guys have been able to take over the course of, said years. How long have you been in that position specifically with Community Crew?
So I've been there for 5 years. And when I started 5 years ago, we had about 4 programs running. So we did a lunch program, after school backpack, and
Gotcha.
What else? The other one?
That's okay. I mean, you guys have done so much. It's actually pretty impressive. I got to say, and I'm going to hit you with a hard, challenging question right at the get-go is some people say, oh, well, the kids that go to school without lunches, their parents just are too lazy to make them lunches. You work for Community Crew. You obviously have a heart for those children. Is it the attitude of whether or not their parents aren't necessarily making them lunches or relying on Community Crew, you're always going to be there to support them? Is that where that kind of falls?
Such a great question, because we have people ask that all the time. And really, we work with the teachers and principals really closely to say who comes on a very regular basis without a lunch or something like a can of pop. Like, they'll have kids who come every single day. They'll either bring nothing, they'll bring a can of pop or a chocolate bar. And we meet these kids in the school, and they're so incredible. Like, you would never know that they come from a home that maybe struggles. And the kids will pick up their lunch and they'll leave. And the teacher will turn around and say to us, Mom struggles with mental illness. She's on suicide watch. This child has 5 brothers and sisters, and he packs the lunches for them all the time. And so those are stories that we hear every single day. And we're just like blown away. So are there people who maybe take advantage of the program? Possibly, but I think that happens in every charity.
There's no way of controlling that, but you guys, see, I didn't actually even know that. I'm glad, because I've everybody wonders that, right?
Exactly.
Is how much is the program being taken advantage of without them knowing? And you try to minimize, as a program leader, you try to minimize that as much as possible.
Sure.
And it sounds like your vetting process is extremely strong. Was that something that was developed as you learned and understood that there are some people that take advantage of it?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say like we have a high amount, and we don't even look at those numbers. Like for us, we really look at, when we speak with the teachers and principals, we say to them, who do you know that needs assistance? And they know all the background stories of the families that we work with. And when we started with 42 kids, 42 lunches once a week. And now we're serving 4,700 lunches over 3 days a week.
What?
Which is incredible. And so we know that these kids, if they are being served on a Tuesday when we serve the lunch, they're also going to need Wednesday, Thursday for us to be able to provide them with an awesome lunch.
So community crew, from my personal experience, I get billed like $12 a month.
Yeah.
How it would seem next to impossible that $12 a month is actually doing something. What, like, that's actually incredible, to be honest with you. Can you disclose a little bit of that?
So we created this program called 12 for 12, and we touted it as the Netflix for giving. Now Netflix is like almost double.
But I love that. That's amazing. That's creative.
It's super cool because we want everyone to be able to donate. So, I mean, you're obviously much younger than I am, but my son, he's 15. He just started working and he volunteers on a regular basis. So he's like, hey, I want to be able to give back. And something for him, $12 is really easy
it's
for
very
him to
doable.
be able to give. And we say $12 a month provides 72 lunches each year for someone that does that. So we want to make it really easy, really tangible for anybody at any price point to be able to give. And that's our monthly giving program. But if you start totaling like $12 and $12,
it really adds up.
It adds up so much. And the reality is like, you look at it and you're like, $12. Oh, how many subscription models do I have? Like I look at Amazon Prime, I have Netflix. I was like, I probably have 7 different subscriptions.
You guys are literally cheaper than Netflix.
Exactly.
And people are providing. I think it's absolutely genius, especially in a charity. You're obviously always going to have overhead, but if you can bring in like insane numbers in terms of just the people that want to support, if it's 1 million people give $1 a year, that's fantastic. That's pretty good, right? If it's 100,000 people that give $12, if it's 10,000 that give $12, whatever it is, it's an affordable price point. And it's absolutely genius. You look at quantitative over qualitative, and you're providing that intermediate in between. I mean, you're not getting these kids steak dinners, but they don't need steak dinners, right? You're providing that in between that really supplies the best food, the healthiest food for the most amount of children possible.
Exactly.
Sarah, I want to talk a little bit about your past before community crew. Sure. I know you were at a charity before that as well, but you even have something a little bit more interesting to tell. And we don't have to spend the whole time talking about it. You were a model traveling the world, living, I think, everybody's dream, male and female. I mean, if I was told that I was good looking enough and could travel to Milan and anywhere really I wanted to, I'd probably take the job. Can you give us a little background on that? And then I'll probably follow up with some questions.
Sure. I was a really tall kid. And so everyone used to say to me, you're so tall. And I used to hate it because I'm almost 5'10". So
that's not that tall.
Their next question was, for a girl, it is, though.
True.
And so their next question was, are you a model? And I was like, no, I'm never going to do that. And I started doing it when I was 16. And when I was 18, when I was 16, I started in Toronto. And when I was 18, I had the opportunity to go to Milan. So
2 years.
Yeah.
What?
Yes. And so they called me on a Friday and said, can you be in Milan on Tuesday? And I was like, yeah, no problem. Just, every teenager's dream.
Oh my God.
And I spent the next 2 years traveling. So I lived in Milan, I lived in Hamburg, Germany. I lived in Athens for a while. I was in Egypt. And then the times when I was home, I spent a lot of it in Toronto. And then I live out of the Niagara region. So I was there as well.
Was that the end all be all goal? Or was that, it sounds like it was something that just fell into place, because at 18 years old, you're literally graduating high school.
Yes, but I knew I only wanted to graduate, and that was it, because I was working so much in the industry that I was missing, don't repeat this, kids, but I was missing high school on a very regular basis.
Right.
And for me, high school was really challenging, but all I wanted to do was like travel. I wanted to learn. At that time, I didn't realize it, but I was learning how to run a business. So I had to teach myself and work with accountants and do my own taxes. And I had to be prepared to do they were called castings at the time, but it was like basically multiple job interviews every single day that you had to go and you had to work for the client. So it was such an interesting dynamic. I don't always recommend it because, coming from like a female empowerment where I want to see, lots of great things for young women in the world, it's a really hard industry to break into.
Yeah. And I interviewed a past model as well. And it is a very apparently there were talks about like Victoria's Secret and just like some of the stuff, the illegal stuff that was going on behind the scenes. I mean, it's a really sad thing. I think it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people because a lot of people were affected by that, especially females in the industry. I just think that a lot of people take it, especially men, and I'll say this, is they more so take advantage of it on a wider basis.
I think so. And I think at that time, so when I was modeling like 20 years ago, we were coming out of like the Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, beautiful,
Really? Right.
like curvaceous women. And we were going into something called, the trend at that time was called heroin chic. And so all models had to be like super androgynous. You had to look very much like drugged out and like really sunken cheekbones. So if you didn't have that, if you had like an
proper,
everyday,
yeah.
like my look is what they used to call catalog. So I used to book a lot of catalog work, like Sears and that type of stuff, because I looked very like girl next door. But it didn't work for the industry in the time because it was very, you had to almost look strung out. Like that was the hot item.
Yeah.
Hot look, I guess you could
It's
say
like
at the time.
a lot of people avoid the modeling talk because it's
Sure.
like, oh, you're attractive. Oh, you're not attractive. How does one not take that personally?
You can't
Like, honestly.
not take it personally. And so there's so many people that touch you and look at you and are like, oh, no, oh, you're too heavy. Like I am very tall and I was probably 25 pounds lighter than I am now. And I'm pretty like fit right now. But I was told time and time again, like, you're too heavy, lose 5 pounds.
Really?
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the people that are telling you definitely do not take care of themselves.
That is
It's a
the
hard
hardest
industry.
thing I can imagine.
Yes.
So was there a level of frustration, but also a level of like, do you mind talking about your mental health in that time? I mean, it definitely shine a light on other people, other women especially, who are
Sure.
becoming models.
So at that time, there wasn't a lot of talk around mental health. It was just sort of, you go into the industry and everyone thinks it's so glamorous. And there are a lot of fun, really fun perks, but everything you've heard about the industry is true. So, you know, the shyster and kind of weirdo clients who try and book you and do shady things, they're always there. The drugs, the alcohol, the cigarettes, whatever you want, it's there. And so you have to be, one, really street smart. You have to surround yourself with a really good group of people. I was lucky I had a great group, but there was a lot of young women from other countries, 14 years old, traveling to Milan by themselves.
Oh,
and you
wow.
would see them get, you know, like asked by older men, like, come with me, I'll take you on a date, I'll do this. And they would just willingly go.
Because it's all they know, right?
It is. And it takes a long time. Like I'm 43 and it still plays in your mind a little bit about like, oh, am I like thin enough? Do I look healthy enough? Am I feeling, you know, not myself today? And so I don't think you recognize it at the time, but later down the line, it still shows up. So it's not something that I recommend to young women anymore. So anyone who comes to me and is like, I'm thinking of breaking into the modeling industry. And the first thing I say is, you really need to do like some mental health work around it and really know what you're getting into.
It's almost like it's impossible to take that much of a beating, especially for as long as you did it and for as professionally as you did it. You weren't just doing, you know, around Toronto, okay? There's that level, which is pretty solid. Then there's like actually traveling the world doing it.
Yep.
That's a whole other level. And you're being told so many different things. It is actually, it's really interesting to hear that. Breaking out of that, was there anything like, because then it leads me into like, why charity? Like it just doesn't, I don't know, to the average person it wouldn't add up. So I'm really curious, why go from modeling, an industry that a lot of people would frown upon or some people would take advantage of, to work that really just gives back?
So it's such a great question because from a really young age, I always wanted to be, first I wanted to have a big sister. So the program,
really?
like Big Sisters, I was like, I want to have a big sister. And they're like, you don't qualify. So I said, okay, I want to do something with the organization. So I was around 9 or 10 and I actually called Big Brothers, Big Sisters and was like, I would like to be a big sister. And they're like, how old are you?
Right. And
And they're like, you have to be 18.
Yeah.
So I always knew in the back of my mind. So even from a young age, I was doing charitable work. My mom would take me to events and I would volunteer with her. When I was 14, I don't even know if we have it anymore, but you could be a candy striper at a local hospital.
Really?
So you could actually like serve meals and take care of like elderly people and serve water and take care of babies. And so my girlfriend.
Well, with everything that
did
just
that after
happened, I
school.
doubt they let random people in.
That's
but
right.
I want to ask you real quick. Sorry to cut you off there, but
Yeah.
was it an innate thing in you that I always ask this because whether you ask super ultra billionaire successful people or you ask people that are in the charity industry or wherever, it doesn't even matter who you are. The hardest question to answer and what I want to challenge you to think on is, was this something that was innately built in you that you developed yourself? Or was it something that was partially innate and maybe your parents really developed it? Or was it something that was really developed by your parents to who you are?
No, I think it was always in me. Like I knew. And even when I left the modeling industry, I left because like the messaging to my parents was, I'm leaving because I feel hollow and empty. Like I need something more fulfilling to do. So I went back to school and I went for something called sales and marketing at Niagara College at the time. And I just needed something where I wasn't looked at like a commodity. I was able
like a
to
product.
give back.
Yeah.
Yeah, a product basically. And
What's sad is like in the modeling world, you kind of are like,
you are like
in this
you
business.
are the product. Yeah.
Yeah, the product is the video that we create or the photos
Sure.
that we take.
Exactly.
For models, it's literally you. And if you're not a good enough product for a client,
Exactly.
it's you that's not good enough.
Exactly.
Wow,
Exactly.
that's really hardening to think about. Sorry, continue about your story though.
Okay.
Just innate. You said it was something that was naturally in you.
I think it was naturally in me. So I worked a long time in events and I really, at one time I wanted to be a wedding planner. And I planned a few weddings and I was like, this is not for me.
Right.
I want to be like a corporate because I loved my corporate clients.
Really?
They were really easy. They just came in, were like, here's our budget, here's what we want, deliver on it.
Yeah.
And so I loved working with them. I found them really great to work with. And after I think it was my first son, I needed something that was a little bit more at home for me. So in the industry I was working a lot of nights and weekends, and this heart and stroke came up, and basically they were like, you get to run the Jump Rope for Heart program, which was so cool because I remember doing Jump Rope for Heart as a kid.
Right.
And my whole job was to get schools to come on board, participate in Jump Rope for Heart, talk to the kids about being healthy. And I got to work in the day, and it was like great pay, and my team was really great, and I got to work with volunteers. So it was a little bit like selling, but it was also the charitable side. And I spent 7 years there.
What's fantastic is it really sounds like you got both of the best worlds. Like
right.
I think everybody who has a good heart wants to give back, and you have to make, like, at the end of the day, you have to make money, right?
Yeah.
So if you can do both and somehow, make that work, I mean, that's fantastic. So I can definitely see why you would swoop up that opportunity. What about you makes you fulfilled doing your job?
So for the community crew side, I love it because one, like we get to help the kids, which is obviously incredible. But when I started, it was really, not that it was new, but it was like newer. We were still trying to figure out the processes, like figure out the best way to serve the kids, figure out a way to grow the program. And when we figured it out, we just started growing and growing and growing. So to me, it's like running a business. It's creating a business from the ground up. And we can talk charity, we can talk business, but basically running a charity is running a business.
Yeah, we talked about that off camera. Just how similar they really are.
It's true, and people look at it, and a lot of people think like, okay, you have to run a charity, and everyone works for free, and you just have to get everything donated to you. But that's not really the case. Like, it's not realistic.
That's maybe a local town church charity.
Exactly.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But if you want to make, quantitative impact, which I know Central does because I know Central, when you want that for yourself or just in general for people, you've got to consider it as a business, because at the end of the day, everybody looks at it as a business. Maybe there's some businesses that donate to community crew and look at how does this benefit us as well, and there's always going to be that side of it. Have you found that in some businesses? Not that that's a problem.
So I think for the community crew side, like community crew, a lot of people don't know, they automatically assume it's still Central Church. And community crew is created out of Central Church, but it's actually a registered national charity, and it's a non-religious charity. So it's a way for people in the church and outside of the church to be able to come and serve kids and not have to worry about, their belief system. They just want to give back to kids, and it's a great way for everyone across the community to get involved.
That's really smart. Was that right out the get-go? Because
That was.
it was, eh?
It
Like we
was.
have to separate ourselves from because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to have the same beliefs, but everyone will, or most will have a sense of wanting to give back.
Exactly.
And they might be deterred by, if it's just one specific belief that you have to support.
Exactly. And Central Church is a very big supporter of ours. Like we are their local charity of choice for their mission side. And so there's a lot of volunteers who come from the church who help out. And there's a lot of volunteers, because we've been expanding, who are not part of the church. And it's just really nice synergies between everyone.
That's
and
fantastic.
The main goal is we feed kids.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit to community church, because you are the Director of Operations at Central Community Church.
So my role is Director of Operations at Central Niagara. So I oversee the building side. So there's the church, there's the charity, and there's the for-profit building side.
Once again, has to be separated from the business.
That's right. So I run the for-profit side, and I take care of the bookings and bring in clients. So it's very much back to my hotel days.
Well, you have to keep the building up, right?
That's right. That's right. We have to make sure that it runs, and it's such a great space that it's such an easy sell.
Yeah.
Clients come in and they're automatically wowed by, how big the lobby is and how beautiful and how much light goes in. And, the events that we've hosted there already, people are just blown away.
The way that you guys designed it, and shout out to the MacArthurs as well, who are good family friends, totally helped me get Sarah on. It's fantastic because the way that you guys design it, even just from a architectural standpoint, is super, super smart. I mean, I remember when Grant walked me and my father through, and the second you walk in, you're filled with light, filled with it. And it's a massive, open, wide corridor. That's not even a corridor. It's just a huge grand hallway. Exactly. And then you can go into your own different areas. I mean, you have a cafe, you've got separate rooms. I also understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys actually offer daycare. Is that correct?
Yes. So there's, it's
separate again.
A community center, but it's multi-purpose. It's like a multi-purpose building. And so the church rents the space and they host their church on Sundays. So Sunday, they basically take over the building. I don't book anything in there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Monday through Friday, there is a daycare, and they run 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, the daycare is so in demand that there's a huge wait list already for it, and it's just about to open next week. And then the rest of the time, the space, we have a 2-year volleyball contract with the Niagara Rapids. And so they're going to be using the main auditorium space Monday through Thursday. We have corporate clients, we have concerts, we've done some weddings in there. Today I just came from the site and we hosted a beautiful memorial service in there. So it's truly multi-purpose. You can do anything in there. Yeah. And Community Crew hosted their gala a couple weeks ago in there, and we transformed the entire space, brought in catering teams, serving staff, and just transformed it from church into a very fancy, high-end gala.
What's fantastic is, and Pastor Bill, who, Bill Markham, who loves volleyball as well, so not surprised that Rapids is somehow in there in the mix. To be honest with you, he's a great volleyball coach, totally led Eden to a lot of victories. But going back, I remember when you guys were in the older building, and from my understanding, it was really just a church. I don't know. Maybe you guys rented some space out a little bit. But the vision was to create a space where, the church can be funded if the future of donations, because that's kind of how churches have always been funded, is through donations of the community. The way that you guys have established it is so you're not reliant all the time on those. You definitely support them and appreciate them. And I think there will always be the people that want to donate to a church. But there's also that side that you want to build something greater, bigger, and allow people to have daycare, which is on such shortage still. And I mean, it's nice to know that there's a local daycare. It's already taken up, which is absolutely insane. You've got incredible space. I want to compare on the business side real quick. We were discussing some of the benefits that the building offers. And, you know, as operations manager, director, you completely understand that. Can you give us a little background or like even just details on what you guys provide in comparison to most places?
Yeah. So for us, there's 75,000 square, excuse me, take that out. There's 75,000 square feet of space total. Our main area hosts about 1,800 people. And so we can do concerts, we can do everything in there. There is actually, I want to say, from my knowledge, about 3 to 4 spaces across the region that can host that many people, and that's it. So Central is one of those spots that is a top competing spot. We've also built really nice relationships with the hotels around, so we have those accommodations available for all of our guests that come in. We have complimentary parking. No one with that size offers complimentary parking. And so
which, because you could make so much money off that if you did.
We could, you know, and there are tons of opportunities for us to be able to make money, but we want to provide value to our clients that are coming.
Which is so smart.
Exactly. And then the other thing that we don't do as well is we don't charge a tourism improvement fee.
Explain this, because you were explaining to me off camera, and not many people understand this.
Yes. So
good to know.
It's not just throughout the Niagara region, I will point out. So if you go to if you go to Vegas, or if you go to, I think, Muskoka area, some places have it. When you go to some of those really touristy areas, you'll see something like a TIF, tourism improvement fee, destination management fee, DMF. And it's really anywhere between, like, I think when it first came out, it was like 3 or 4%, and it can be up to 10% of your bill, your hotel, your restaurant.
Which is a ton of money.
Yeah, and basically that goes back into like your, you know, tourism association, and it helps your city, your region be able to promote the destination. And so in hindsight, it's a good idea because you obviously want more people to come. But sometimes when people look at the bill, they're like, what is this? Like, I'm already being taxed a lot, plus gratuity, and what is this TIF? And so that's one of the things that Central does not do. We don't charge a tourism improvement fee to host your event at the space. We just make sure, you know, we offer a very good service for them. We have complimentary parking, complimentary Wi-Fi, which is pretty standard these days.
But wait, you can't skip over the parking because it's so well put together. Do you guys also, is it the sides or is it the back as well, or is it just the sides?
It's the 2 sides. There's like a little bit at the back, but there's almost 700 spaces. Yeah, which is incredible.
Unbelievable. And then you factor in like plus ones, that's 1,400 people right there, that if the place is maxed out, but you only have just 1 and 1 plus 1, that's incredible. Can you talk a little bit about the marketing side of what you guys do? Can you disclose some of that info, just on like how you guys actually manage to build relationships with people locally?
So I would say for us, like myself, Grant, he is in charge of, you know, welcoming people in as well, and business development. And
the guy's a genie. The guy's a genie.
Built the building, but he's very good at relationships and, you know, connecting with people. And I have a lot of industry contacts from being in the hotel industry for a while. It has shifted because of COVID. There's a lot of people that left the industry, but it's like starting brand new, and we're starting a brand new building. And for us, it's very invitational. So like Central Church is extremely invitational. Community Crew is invitational. We're like, come and prep the lunches, see what we do before you decide if you want to donate, see if it's a good charity for you. And for Central Niagara, the building, we say, come and see the space. Once you're in the space,
it's no question to ask.
It's a no-brainer. Like, it's so easy to do.
Yeah, and that premium quality, especially for the area. And there are some other spaces, but I'll be honest, like, I've been to those other spaces around the area, and nothing compares to the privacy and premium luxury feel you actually feel walking into the space. I mean, like we mentioned before, there's a cafe, the amount of light when you walk in, it's astonishing. Was that part of the strategy for the building, is making that entrance absolutely grand?
Well, I think Grant would be able to answer that question more. He was really sort of the visionary behind it, and he did all of the building. But I think when you walk in there and you just see it, you're just blown away by how large it looks. Because from the road, it's like, oh, it looks like a building. It's square. It's sleek. It's it's really nice and posh looking. But once you get in, you're just like, wow, it's so incredible. Like, it doesn't feel like you're in a community center, quote unquote. It feels like you're in, like, not a hotel, but more of a luxurious, like, concert hall when you go in. It's very, very nice.
I want to switch gears a little bit. There's and this is another challenging question. We were talking a little bit about this off camera, but the stigmas around charities.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. There's always going to be people that have their differences of opinion, 100%. And you have to don't necessarily have to agree with all of them, but you hear them. How does Community Crew break the stigmas of some charities that might be like, oh, we're just taking advantage of them, or they're just out for the money, or like, how does Community Crew really differ themselves from that sense?
Great question. I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
I was actually with Grant, and we were doing a presentation in front of Niagara Falls City Council.
Awesome.
And we watched a bunch of organizations come up, and they shared their story. And one thing that is different about Community Crew is we don't share the sob story. We don't say like, kids are starving, kids need this. We obviously talk about stats, but the message behind it is, this is why you need to come and join us. This is why you need to be a part of Community Crew, because we're doing this and this. And wouldn't it be cool to see one of these kids grow up and work at your company? And wouldn't it be cool to know that you donated back to them and now they're actually working for you? And so we set the donor or potential donor in that mindset of, hey, I'm not just giving money, I'm not just giving a lunch, but I could be actually helping to bring a kid out of poverty, help him to get a job down the line, and do
benefit
some
society
cool things in their life. So we change the narrative and we don't make it a sob story. The other thing is with people who talk about wanting to take advantage, there's always going to be that in charity. And so we have to disassociate, like, okay, maybe there's 1% or maybe there's 2% of people that take advantage. We don't know, but that's not for us to worry about. Our goal is to work with the schools and to say, who needs our help? We're here to serve them. We know in your area, say downtown St. Catharines, there's one school we serve. They have about 52% of their kids who live under that low income measure. So that basically means that mom, dad, guardian have to make a choice between paying bills, putting food on the table. And sometimes it's a job loss, a death in the family, mental illness. There's a variety of reasons. So it's not just you don't make enough money and you can't afford to feed your kids. It's tons of reasons. It could be anything.
Even like hard home life.
It could be a hard home life. And in Niagara Falls, like with COVID pandemic, what happened there was so many people in the tourism industry were laid off. And a lot of times those people, they don't always have jobs throughout the winter anyways. And so it's a bit challenging to say, like, there's one specific reason and this is why these kids don't get fed, because there's a variety that go into it.
I want to ask you, why children? For you specifically, why children?
We want to be able to reach these kids before they get to the high school age. So we want them to know, like, okay, they're in school. We want to make sure that, I don't know if many people know, but across the Niagara region, there's an amazing breakfast program. So schools have access to.
They had it at Eden, DSBN. Yeah.
Right, which is awesome. And then our goal is to not do breakfast, to not duplicate any other programs, but to go in and provide a lunch. So these kids that access our program, we know that they're getting a breakfast and lunch throughout the school year. We also know that there's a program that does weekend work. right? And so
Interesting.
on the weekends, these kids, some of them that are the hardest hit, they will have access to food on the weekends. So we're trying to fill in little gaps. And one of the things that we're working on is working with kids at a really young age, and it's called our partner program. So we use this example all the time, but we have a robotics firm. And when you become a partner with Community Crew, you donate $5,000 or more each year, but you also give back to the organization by teaching the kids something that they wouldn't know. So the robotics firm is like, bring these kids in grade 6, 7, 8 when they're younger. We'll teach them how to run a 3D printer. We'll teach them about robotics. We'll teach them like, hey, this is a cool industry that you can get into. And what they don't know is that this robotics firm is making so much money and has so much business that they can't wait for these kids to grow up so they can come and work for them.
Well, what's amazing is that you guys are actually not just, hey, give a kid a lunch, and then the kid doesn't know where the lunch is coming from. The kid doesn't know the reason behind the lunch. And the kid doesn't know the faces behind the lunch. And you're very transparent with how that rolls. I mean, I know Central Church constantly advocates in their sermons and that kind of thing, mentioning, hey, community crew, you can actually see the process. You can see what we do on a day-to-day basis to support these kids' lunches. I want to ask you a couple closing questions. Sure. Take Sarah back to like 7, 8, 9 years old. The kid who, age group wise, would be receiving those lunches. What was your dreams and aspirations for what you wanted to do? Do you know, or?
So at this time, this could be really funny, but when I was like young, I always wanted to be a ballerina.
Really?
And I know it sounds cliche, but I used to want to dance all the time, and I did. And then when I went to high school, I don't even think you were born yet, but there was a show called In Living Color, and they had a group of dancers, and I always wanted to be on that show.
Really? I know there's like another show that I can kind of remember, but I definitely was not that.
Yeah, it was, and basically all of my girlfriends and I wanted to be in music videos, and we just wanted to spend our entire time dancing.
So anything that your parents said to you that you distinctly remember at an early age that maybe influenced the person that you became today?
My parents, I have great parents. So they were super supportive of anything that I tried. And they were always encouraging me to like, shoot for the stars. And when you're so little, you're like,
whatever,
but they really were encouraging, and they're still encouraging to this day. And I just have great parents. I wouldn't say that there's anything profound that I was like, wow, but I remember there was just constant like, okay, we think you can do that. Awesome. Like, that's so great.
I love that.
And
I definitely think as a child, you need that.
Yeah, you do. And so I couldn't imagine growing up in a home where, maybe there's only one parent, or maybe there's mental illness or something along those lines, because sometimes I think when you grow up in a home like mine, where I was privileged to have 2 great parents to put me in dance, to do all those things, sometimes I forget, like, I didn't grow up in a home that, maybe needed a little bit of extra support. So I have to actually go down to the schools. I have to do the deliveries. I have to do the prep, so I can put myself in those places to say, like, how can I serve these kids in a way that they really need it?
As a mother of how many kids?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys. As a mother of 2 boys and someone who actively supports children, what would you say to parents is crucial for children to learn and develop and to grasp and understand at like that, 1 to 10 age? Because I would argue that might be the most actually important, because they subconsciously make a lot of decisions that really portray who they become. I know it's a tough question.
It's not, but it is. And I'll give you, how do I say this nicely? I have 2 boys, and they're very different. And the first boy, when we had him, we're like, we're going to put him into hockey, and we're just going to like, we just think that he's a boy and he should just play hockey. And that clearly was not what he was good at. But he has this gift for music and for
So he's an artsy guy. Yeah.
He's so artsy, and it truly, like, it comes naturally to him. We don't even have to ask him to practice. He just plays and practices and does his own thing. So we're glad that we caught that really early. But I remember thinking with my second son, who's really sporty and competitive, wow, there's so much competitiveness, and not between the kids, but between the parents. And, you know, from a parental side, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, are you pushing your kids because you want to be able to say, like, my kids are so great?
My kid made it to the NHL.
Like, are you doing it because you see something in them? Or, you know, I look at the boys and I think, like, gosh, you know what? You kids volunteer. You do some amazing things. I want you to be the kind kid. I want you to be the kid that volunteers. I want you to be the kid that, you know, doesn't make fun of other kids and who helps others. And I watch the way they interact with their friends. And so that makes me more proud than, you know, my son making the travel hockey team. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. Yeah.
So I think something really interesting to take away from that is really just allotting kids their own interests, trying not to pressure them as much as you can. Just allow them to develop their own interests and to learn on their own. You know, it's no problem to give your 2 cents every once in a while, but really make them feel like anything that they do, you're 100% going to be there.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to ask you, where can people find you? Where can people go support Community Crew?
Sure.
Rent the space at, you know?
Yes. So Community Crew, you can find us on all social channels. So Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, Twitter.
You guys are everywhere,
YouTube,
honestly. Yeah.
And you can go to communitycrew.ca. For the new property, so Central Community Center, you can go to centralniagara.org. And we have a LinkedIn page and we have a Facebook page, and our website is in the process of being developed.
They take a while. It's okay.
They do take a while.
Yeah.
So you can find us on, you know, just think LinkedIn, Facebook for both of them, and you'll find everything that you need to know.
Fantastic. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and shedding a little bit of light. We haven't had anybody that's more charity focused actually on this show. So it's really nice to kind of get a difference of perspective. And I think it's important for parents to understand, you know, children and raising children and how important that is, because you are raising a whole other life just like your own.
Awesome.
Sarah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for listening and watching. We're excited to post this episode. Make sure to stay tuned for more golden guests just like Sarah today. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's Golden Guest on the Meeting Gold podcast. If you learned something from today's episode, make sure to check out our other content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, make sure to leave us a follow while you're there. Thanks, and have a golden day.